prizes do not exceed $400 out of the recreation budget. Can I get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll ask for comments. Moved by Councillor Byrne, seconded by Councillor Buchwald. Questions, or maybe staff wants to speak to it first?
With pleasure, I'll introduce Laura to speak on this. She's worked on this, and I think it's a good initiative.
Okay, we received a challenge from the California Lions Club to light up the night Christmas lights contest. So I forwarded it to Andrew and said, can we do this? And he told me to run with it, and this is what we have. So I've come up with the contest challenge report, and we have our draft posters, and then we have our official rules and guidelines. So we've tried to cover everything in that. Now, they are having a Santa as a judge, and they are also having people call in to vote for the best, but we decided to have a council member as a judge, and we'd let the residents vote on who they think would be the best Santa judge. So we're doing 2 contests in one.
As long as you don't have to dress up as a Santa.
Well, we thought a hat would work anyway.
Yeah, we can do
I
it.
know someone who's got the beard for it.
Yeah. So we are inviting residents to call in and vote for the best Santa. Who would be the best Santa?
Councillor Reddy-Schultz.
How are you going to advertise it to the township?
Well, we have, I thought we'd use all the media available that we have, which is all our social media, the leader, and we also have some airtime yet left on Heritage Radio. And posters, we can put posters in grocery stores, etc.
What's the timeline for the contest?
I believe the dates are in the rules and guidelines. We set it up that the judging will take place the Monday before a council meeting, and the winners would be announced at that council meeting. December, I believe, was the next council.
December 21st.
We're the 1st and we're the 15th, are we not? Yeah.
I think your judge is the 14th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's the Monday before the
the
15th council meeting.
Yeah.
And then the Santa one, we are closing it a little earlier, just to give that Santa enough time.
Excuse me.
I think it's just on the poster. Maybe. Oh, okay. The Santa poster.
The contest opened the 12th and closes the 30th.
Well, I think it's a good idea and provide a little fun and entertainment for our residents.
It will be entertaining.
Yes.
And we did put in the rules and guidelines that we didn't want holographs or those blow up or plastic ornaments. It's just lights.
And now nudity.
Yes, or profanity or non-family friendly. Will not be allowed.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. Councillor Byrne?
Yes.
Councillor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councillor Reddy-Schultz?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
I'm a yes, so that is carried. Thank you. And thank you, Laura, for spearheading that. So we get to item 8.2, which is the Patrick Shea consent B43-20. Have a resolution that council supports the approval of consent B43-20 for Patrick Shea to sever 0.25 hectares from his 0.59 hectare holding, being 68 McMillan Road, part of Lot 20, Concession 5, North Algona. The lot fronts on a municipal road, and both the retained lot and the severed lot meet the requirements for a septic system. And I believe the reason for this resolution is that they were always 2 separate parcels, but MPAC tends to blend them together as one, and this resident would like them kept as two separate parcels. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott.
I believe that to be the case.
Yes, Councilor Recchi Schultz.
Is there a cost to Patrick at all? Like, we have to or when MPAC does something?
Well, any cost would be incurred by him.
But would there be a cost incurred by him?
There probably will be a cost.
Is there something we can say to MPAC that they shouldn't be? Like, can we send something? Because I think a lot of people are going to fall into this where properties that were separate entities are now bulked into one big property.
And this is an Ontario-wide.
But is there something we can send as a resolution that we don't think that Ontario should be doing this? Because I'm not really sure the method to the madness why they're doing this.
So Impact is a corporation owned by the crown, but it's not a ministry. But what maybe this council can do is you can do what other municipalities have been doing lately is sending out all kinds of things for other municipalities to give you support, so.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, and that's
Maybe
kind of
it's
what
your
I'm doing.
turn.
Because I think it's really important. It's affecting a lot of people once they pass away and their children inherit the property that now they're putting everything together. And as a farmer, that's an unfortunate thing, right? Okay.
Yes.
So if I could suggest, we would vote on this, and then the councillors requested that this would come to the next agenda.
Right.
As a letter, so the clerk will work on it.
Perfect.
I think that's a good idea, because I do agree that there's a lot of residents that don't realize that this is even happening until all of a sudden they get a tax bill where the properties are no longer separated, that they're all amalgamated. So that's usually when they start asking questions, and by that time, it's already happened.
Right.
Yes, Councilor Burton.
The only way that people can keep that separate, they put different names on the two lots. They have two different names, then you don't merge them together.
But I think the problem is people don't know that.
No, a lot of people don't know.
Excuse me, so I'll call for the vote on this one. Councilor Burton,
Yes,
Councilor Buckland,
Yes.
Councilor Recchi Schultz,
Yes,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Did I get a mover and a seconder?
that's what I was wondering.
I apologize. Moved by Councilor Recchi Schultz, seconded by Councilor Burton. My apologies. And that is carried. So that brings us to 8.3, which is the strategic plan report. And we have the report, the toolkit, and report number 1. The resolution that council officially adopts the strategic plan as submitted by TGT Solutions as the guiding document for the township, and that all future reports to council be linked to the strategic plan. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Buckland, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Questions? Comments? Yes, Councilor Recchi.
so as I read the strategic document that we received at the last council meeting, and there's lots of good stuff in it, to me, sometimes I got bogged down on certain things, and I seem to be going around in circles. So it's not that I don't think a lot of work was put into it. I guess what I'm saying is it's not what I expected it to be. So even when I read the mission statement and I looked at it and I read it, where it says the township of North Dakota Wilberforce engages listening, learning, communication, advocacy, and means to commit an excellence and continuous improvement in evidence-based decision-making that strengthen the community and leads to common wellness and inclusion of all people who live in trust. And then because I've worked on mission statements before, to me, this one seems really, really long and it's not clear and concise. I actually looked at some other, and I'm not using my phone for bad, evil things, but I have some stuff on it. So I looked at a couple mission statements from other municipalities. And remember, to me, a mission statement is just clear and concise. That's all I want it to be. And this one from the township of Perth South said, to provide open and accountable government, I think we can't disagree with that. Effective and efficient services, and I don't think we can disagree with that, to ensure prosperity, development while maintaining quality of life. to me, this is something that really I can hang my hat on and I really, really understand and I can see how we can tie everything into that. When I read our mission statement, I think I get bogged down just by the length of it and the brevity about it. At any rate, and this is just my opinion, so I'm just saying that. And then the other problem I was having, and I think it was clarity tonight, was when I was looking at our different key indicators or key values. And so one was like environmental stewardship, the inclusive union connection, joint celebration, family. And I can see now how they all be interwoven. But when I looked at it first, I'm thinking if environment, and I'm not sure if these were ranked, that environmental stewardship was the first. And then I was thinking it was alphabetical order, but it wasn't alphabetical order. So now I was thinking, is it ranked? Doesn't really matter. I really thought environmental stewardship would be one of the projects that we'd be working on because we have so many water, lakes, and we have Shawwoods, and we have managed forests. I thought we'd be working around some kind of project related to that because I can see in our community there might be a lot of buy-in to that. I see where Shayla's coming from, where it'd be interwoven, but that was kind of a concern to me because when I looked at our 6 projects, I didn't see environmental stewardship stand out at me. And then when I looked at those 50 guiding principles, I mean, they were great, and I truly wonder where they all came from the residents. And then that brought me back to how many residents were actually surveyed. And then I know you say you surveyed a group, but sometimes a group can actually speak for individual people. That's a little bit confusing to me. Plus 2, you can see it better on the computer than you could here. So then I was trying to categorize how many responses were from youth lenses, and that wasn't so bad. But then the purple and the red and the burgundy, they kind of all got mixed up, and I was trying to figure that out. Then when I looked at the walk the talk, I really, really, really wish we had a picture of our municipal offices, because that's the core to our government, is our municipal office. At any rate, then I went on to that one page that I'm still really super confused about, and it's the puzzle piece one. And I don't even know what page it's on. That was the other thing. I thought having a table of contents for anybody trying to refer back and forth would have been helpful. At any rate, I mean, it is what it is, and there's lots of good stuff on it, and just as we talked about, it is a starting point from where we're going to develop things. But my biggest thing is, like George said, community is what makes your municipality run. And the volunteers within the community are the ones that do it. So we have to go to our volunteers and say, what do you need? Now, first of all, they should tell us, and we should say, yes, that's a good idea. Can you do it on your own? Sure. And then there might be another project that comes, can you do it on your own with a little help from us? And they might say, yeah, we just need you to do this. And another project might be from the community, and they'll say, you know what, we think this is a really great idea. We don't know where to start, and we really, really need your help. So when I look at this document, there's parts I love and parts to me that are very, very confusing. And then it's like, how are we going to ever put these things into place? And the bad thing is, if we say our volunteers are so important, how are we going to get volunteers? And to me, does this address how we're going to get volunteers? I'm not sure. Anyway, that's my 10 cents worth. I mean, I know a lot of time and effort was put into it, and I mean, I guess it's easier pointing out stuff that I would have liked, but I wasn't part of it, so anyway, that's my thoughts.
Maybe I'll ask Shayla if she would like to
I
respond.
would love to respond. So a lot of points were made, so I'll try to remember them all. First of all, every single project enables volunteers, and specifically the walk the talk model is about setting up the internal processes, trust, and rapport that's required to engage the community. The low survey responses are often associated to the reality that people don't feel their voice is valid or heard. And so we have to address that pre-existing condition prior to the consultation. So there's a history here in this community of distrust with leadership. And so we must look at that pre-existing condition and understand that the organization has an opportunity to do that in a better way, to communicate on a two-way street in a better way. I cannot pronounce to you enough how often open, transparent, and accessible communication was brought up among your residents. So this piece of listening and learning That's why that's in your mission statement. Those are value expressions in your mission statement to live and die by in every single initiative you might undertake, regardless of what's contained in this plan. So creating a culture of open communication requires time, it requires tools, and it requires capacity and learning within this organization. And so when we think about the walk the talk strategy, that's why we prioritized it, because setting up that foundational structure of input from the community through the town listener role, for example, through a forum, through an ongoing process that's nurtured and managed by town staff and council, this is what's going to create the culture in this community that anytime I want to engage with my township, they will receive me and hear me and listen and participate. And so this is a very important foundational step to be able to gather the enthusiasm and contribution of volunteers. Because right now, the volunteer communities are working in silos. This property association alone, this food bank alone, you know, all of the different agencies want to work together. They want to be supported by the town, and they just need processes and opportunities to do that. So that's what Walk the Talk is about. It's also about your attraction, the kind of tourism that you want, the kind of resident you want to attract, and presenting that brand and that trustworthy small community approach to the outward, to the outsiders, right? People visiting and wanting to come here. And so that particular project is the paving of the way, right? It's the grading on the road to make sure that volunteers can come forward and trust that they will be received. So that is the first piece. The second thing I would mention is I'm glad that you were able to pick up on that values are threaded throughout a project, because yes, you are engaged in a lot of projects on environmental stewardship right now. The amendment in the official document of water controls, the support for the Golden Lake Properties Association and the sipping of Round Lake, all of that is absolutely your already existing influence in environmental stewardship. And in fact, when you look at the community kitchen plan, it involves really deep concentration on agri-food systems, food security, food sovereignty, all sorts of agricultural focus on preserving this land and making sure that people can be fueled and fed by it. And so that is an expression of environmental stewardship. And I think that that shows up in Walk the Talk with respect to showcasing that to future residents, that you are environmentally focused. I remember having a conversation with a woman in your community about, well, we don't want the wakeboarders like Bala has on Golden Lake. And I said, well, what kind of tourists do you want? And she said, well, we want like hikers, like people that come to Shaw Woods and this kind of resident. And I said, great, then advertise that that's who you are, right? That we attract family fun outdoors. So that environmental stewardship value is right in the Walk the Talk project as well. So yes, I'm glad that we looked at the value statements. I'll take your comment about the mission statement. Mission statements are about what we will do. It's a behavior-based statement that expresses what we will do. The example that you provided has two doings and a bit of vision at the back end. So if you reread that statement, you'll see that it's using good governance and great resource usage to achieve quality of life. That is Municipality 101. What I want for this community is to stand apart. And we do this by valuing listening and learning and communication as the cornerstone thing that's required to lever the humans in this area. But the commitment to excellence and continuous improvement means that you're not just learning from what's coming in, you're learning inside as you grow and develop. And so that's the middle part of the statement. But the finale of the statement is about recognizing that widespread wellness with less barriers to participation, focusing on people's life security, moves them out of unable to participate and into welcomed and able to. So this mission statement is 3 components. I'll agree it could be less wordy, but at the end of the day, what I want you to see is that the values of listening, learning, and improvement are at the top end, so that you can address the exact gaps of people's barriers of life to prevent them from contributing to their own community. So that's what that mission statement is all about, is recognizing your role in the paving or the grading of the condition of life here. And so that's my comment about that one. I would suggest that your comments about the statements and being color-coded, and, you know, there's a visual appeal to the document too. We wanted it to look visually appealing, and I really don't like organizing things in linear ways because it's not inclusive to all types of learners and readers. So we do this in a dynamic way as a design team so that it is legible to all types of audiences and not just the standard visual learner. So that is why we took an infographic perspective in many of the documents. I'll take your feedback about table of contents. We can easily improve that.
Well, and it was the coloring, like if you looked, your cones and rods as you get older, the sharpness isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the color was a bad idea, I'm saying some of the colors were closely the same.
Sure.
Which
And I,
makes
you
it
know,
more difficult. In my case, I mean, a pink or a different color, there was a bunch of them that kind of looked the same. So as I was reading it, it was hard for me to flip back and forth.
I'll take that feedback. That's a design comment rather than a content comment, and
That's right.
I'll receive that.
But I'm just, as people are reading it, and this is a very important document because it's going to guide us in the next 10 to 15 years, I think it's important that people are able to easily read it and not think about, well, is this what it was meant and not what it was meant? So I mean,
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm just thinking if I took this to the coffee shop and I sat it on the table, would people be able to dive in and start saying, this is what, I get it, this is what's meant there, right?
Right,
And that's
and
an
so maybe I'll explain a little bit more about the design. So we did this double page spread with the infographic centric on one of the pages, so you could literally pull it out and put it on your wall.
Mhm.
So that visual of the community kitchen, that particular one, or even the digital signal one, those were designed as 11 by 17 posters, so that you could put it up on your wall and own that, right? So as a resident, you could actually pick the page you might want to print, or maybe as a leader, you would put that up on your bulletin board, and that this model would help you to know the founding principles to think about as you plan and grow in the initiative, so that you don't have to dive into the following subsequent pages that have the sort of context of why we're suggesting this. So that's why it was designed that way. It's a pull apart document rather than a bound document. So I'm hoping that we can, you know, if there's a few design changes we can make, I'd be happy to make some color choice, vibrancies, these kinds of simple moves. But for communication and readability, this is why we did the toolkit. So it would be very easy to see how much is going into each one of the initiatives. But, you know, I think as my role as the writer and the developer of this, I must deliver on the context of why, and the academia and the bigger research initiatives that I've been involved in and specialized for this plan to bring the heat on the absolute, you know, truth of the evidence of this approach. So when we look at the community consultations and the listening exercises and how we carefully curated those, instead of focusing on exhaustion, we focused on the right voice at the right time. This is paired with regional, provincial, national, and global research that builds up the base of these projects. So the subsequent pages in the plan that are text heavy is just my due diligence of explaining to you what was levered to come up with this idea. It's not just one consultation in the community that built this. This is my entire 15 years in the sector culminating in one document, to be fair. So I think this is really important to reflect that this is well beyond the learning and listening that went on within the borders of this municipality. It involves the best practices of the most prominent communities, small communities across the world. UK models are built in here, all sorts of really cool stuff. So I don't benchmark my work against what other small towns are doing in Canada. I look at the bigger picture. And I think that these traditional ways of doing strategic plans leave many pieces of the population behind and send municipalities off in the direction of micro projects rather than strategic moves, which is a totally different thing. Strategic moves can be levered to attract people, to support the current residents, and to reduce time and money and energy spend. Projects are band-aids. right? The laundry list of splash pad and this and that on a micro scale, those are just Band-Aids based on desires and wants, right? What we're trying to do is build the structure that this community needs to thrive as a leader in rural community development that is not focused on a downtown, not focused on having any large employer here. All of those typical things that small communities lever, we don't need that. We need who we have and the resources we have today and some alignment. And so that's really what this plan is about, is marrying together many different innovative practices that progressive communities have adopted that I've researched and spent time helping them to build. And so that is my gift, is bringing much more to the table than the consultation process, and the joy I had getting to know this place was added to the joy that I have getting to know many other places too.
I do have to say, I mean, I know the Lake Erie Property Owners Association and the Golden Lake, they do communicate back and forth, and then there is an interlake one. So like when you said they were in their own silos, like I have to disagree with there, because I know they work together, and if one has an initiative, the other one will talk, or the other one will ask for, them to have a writing thing so the other one can present more information to it. So, and then I also know, even with the food banks, I know there is dialogue between the different food banks, just in terms of resources or best practices and that too. And that's important also.
Oh, and I will take that comment, and I apologize if I said the opposite, but I meant that they're working alone in their sector. I don't mean that they are not collaborating with other like-minded projects. I mean that they don't have other players supporting them in a robust way, day to day, right? I mean, the number one piece of feedback from food banks was instability. Getting moved around, not having, being in a basement, being here, being on Main Street, dealing with the stigma, right? Being questioned on the budget line, of what that contribution is, and having to reapply year after year for some of the basic service in the community, right? So when we talk about those kinds of things, that's what I mean about silo, is that we're not exactly sure how to support them and to make sure that it's secure.
And I think it's important to see your method to the madness, where I was basing this report solely on North Algonah Wilberforce, but what you're saying is you made this report based on the world.
I made this report based on your version of the best practices across the world. It's your version of it, because there are fundamental truths about small towns, especially in small places like rural geography, that are shared. Transportation issues, isolation issues, aging demographics, youth out migration, low immigration, low job creation, socioeconomic outcomes. You can list the rural condition challenges that appear in many, many, many small towns.
What would you say in our small North Algonah Wilberforce is something unique to us that wouldn't be unique to another small municipality within Ontario?
This particular municipality?
Mhm.
Absolutely. So you actually have the most interesting combination of rural diversity. You have the Algonquins, you have the Mennonites, you have the traditional agricultural community, you have artists here, you have growers here, you have herbalists, and they're not centralized. They're totally dispersed, and coordinating them and bringing them together in this shared, I call this the rural mosaic, because it's not the diversity you might think about, Danforth and Pape. We're talking about rural diversity. And for you particularly, you have a number of cultural communities that are deeply rooted in their identity of the people that live here. And so this is it's a chief asset that not many other places can say. And when we combine and collaborate all of these communities working together, this is like multiculturalism in a rural lens, right? Of the idea of different ways of life, people who homeschool, people who farm, people who go to work in the city, commute, all living in one place and supporting each other and leaning in. This is what I call the extreme version of belonging in diversity, of like all humans, their underlying goal is to feel accepted and like the belonging, but that's the antithesis of fitting in, right? We don't want a homogenous community, and you don't have one, you have a diverse community. So we want these individuals to shine for their individuality and diversity, And when they're brought together in a, for example, community kitchen environment where cultural sharing is happening over food, breaking bread, which is also a necessary industry foundation here in agriculture and farming, well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful what can happen with the diversity you can leverage here.
And were you able to talk to the Mennonites? Did they complete any surveys?
We did this through the relationship that Andrew already had, because we felt that nurturing that relationship is a critical piece. It's just like working with any cultural community. Rapport, relationship building, nurturing, and trust building is so important. And I felt that your CAO had a much better, and your mayor had a much better position than I may have been able to acquire in a short period of time. And I also try not, as a consultant, to ever develop relationships that I cannot sustain over the long term, okay? Apologize. So I think that's a really important thing to be careful about, right? We don't do things in token. And so I let that consultation come back, which is a genuine interest to flesh out the fresh food options, to become a more robust supplier through partnerships because of the limitations of electricity use and transportation, but really to be known as that fresh food supplier in this area, which was one of the BRE outcomes, as you might recall, from your business study.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That was quite a lengthy discussion. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwell?
Yes.
Councillor Reichel-Schoenfeld?
No.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. If you would like to exit, Shayla, that's fine.
Thank
We
you.
certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
So item 8.4 is the BV NAW Letter of Understanding. I have a resolution that council accepts the report on the letter of understanding and authorizes the mayor and chief administrative officer to sign the letter on behalf of the township. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Robinson. And I'll just ask staff if you can give us a little background on this.
If you could pull up the letter itself. Yes, so from the direction of council, the mayor and myself met with the mayor and the CAO of Bon Cher Valley. And the discussion was in regard to the possibility down the road of sharing services and to have an agreement to share services. It's not about a direction to share services, it's just that the possibility exists if we're going to. So at this point, we certainly couldn't have an agreement, but what we do have is a letter of understanding that somewhere down the road, we could go towards an agreement. There were protections, I wrote the letter, and we coordinated the rest of the letter with the CAO from Bon Cher Valley, but there's some protections in for both municipalities. One thing that the mayors felt that residents did not want is any indication or any direction towards amalgamation of any type. That basically we're just buying a service from them. So that's really incorporated into the letter. For a protection for Bon Cher Valley in the future, if we were ever to have a water system, it's advisable for the owner of the water system to meter it themselves. So I just put that in there. I've done these agreements before. Another thing is that we put on the very last line, further that prior to any formal negotiation, Eagle Township may terminate this letter of understanding within 14 days notice, written notice. What this means is that if we were to have some development, they can't terminate, they can terminate it right now because there's no development, but if we've already started negotiating, they can in good faith say, oh, we're gonna terminate it because we want to have the deals. So that's why that's put in there. But basically, there's no financial commitment and there's no going forward other than the fact that both municipalities agreed that they could at some point share services if that's what they want to do. So it's just that one thing to have in place that the developer came to us today and said, well, we want to develop a great big area and we'd like to put water and sewer in. What's your plans? Well, we don't have really plans, but our other neighboring municipality says that they would be willing to sell us water if that's what we want. So that's what this letter is all about. And Lone Shore Valley has approved this letter and signed it, so it would just be the mayor and myself signing the letter that we both agree.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Buckwald,
Yes.
Councilor Ledger-Schoenfeld,
Yes,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so that's carried. Thank you. Item 8.5 is the Christmas break. I have a resolution that council accepts the report on Christmas break and that the township office will be closed from 12 p.m. noon on December 24th and reopens on January the 4th, 2021. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Buckwald, seconded by Councilor Burke. Thank you. Comments or questions? Councilor Robinson.
Last year, did we open at for a couple of days before the end of the year?
I'll maybe ask staff if
Could you go to
they
the
can
report,
recall.
please? So just for council's information, while we're waiting for the report to come up, the week of the 28th, the 28th would actually be a staff holiday, and the 31st, so only those 2 days are between, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But what we're saying in the report is this would not affect staff work assignments and services during the holiday season, like transfer stations and snow clearing. So anything, that we would have to do some inventory at the end of the year, so those things would still go on. This would be, the office would be basically closed for business during those 3 days of that week. Typically, businesses like to close their business on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve early, like at noon. So we would have some staff doing some things, but the office would be generally closed.
so some office staff would be in the office.
There would be there's inventory that we have to do at the end of the year, basically asset inventory. So there would be someone at times in the office doing some of those things. But the office wouldn't be open for the public to come in and out of.
And that's the question I was asking. Last year, I think we had a couple of days.
And we did have those to cover the last of the tax bills. We had very few people come in. I didn't put stats in, but there was very few people that actually came in to pay their taxes off. And we anticipate there's actually less this year.
Any other comments? Councilor Buckwald.
Just looking at the calendar for those weeks. There's no additional cost being incurred by the township, the municipality by doing this. The staff are using overtime during that Christmas through New Year's week. I'm okay with that. Again, if we didn't have a whole lot of work coming in last year, staff want to use up their time before the end of the year, that's a good opportunity for it.
Any other comments, questions? Say none. Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Buckwald,
Yes.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld,
Yes,
Councilor Robinson.
No.
And I'm a yes, so that's carried, thank you. Item 8.6 is the TGT asset management. I have a resolution that council directs the clerk treasurer to prepare a detailed report on costing for asset management software based on the information provided by TGT Solutions. And I got a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Buckwalter, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Questions and comments?
Maybe I can speak on this.
Okay, sure, yes, thank you.
So this information was received at noon on Friday for us, and you might have noticed that this is the second day for our clerk treasurer, so it's been very difficult for staff to do an analysis of this, and what we're asking basically is to give us until the next council meeting to review this information, because there's a lot of information, and some of it is kind of cloudy, so we would like to put it together properly for council and allow the clerk treasurer to review the financial aspect of it.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld.
I'm just a little bit confused. So I thought we purchased asset management software. Was I totally wrong?
Yes.
So what would be?
What we did with Citywide is council looked at this asset management software and said, this is what you want. So the next component of TGT, which there was a resolution, was to bring back pricing to purchase that software.
Okay, so
we
we weren't,
we decided what we want, now we're looking at the price.
so we didn't input anything into our asset management plan. Was that just that one time when we did a Zoom meeting, they were just talking about that?
They were explaining, this is the software, this is all the things you can do.
Right, okay,
And council liked that, so we brought a report back to council saying, if this is what you want, you will get the formal pricing, so this is where we are.
okay.
But there's a lot of components to that, and we would like to be able to break them out for council.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a resolution or something?
Well, we have the price, this is the price, but we don't think the price is in a format that we can clearly show council exactly what you're paying. And we would like the time to do that, so bring it back to the next meeting.
Thank you, and I would agree, because when I read through the report, I found it rather confusing as to what they were actually offering and what it would cost. And, yeah, I appreciate staff putting together a more comprehensive report. So I'll ask for the vote. Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Buckwalter,
Yes.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld,
Yes,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, that's carried, thank you. Item 8.7 is our COVID update. I have a resolution that council accepts the COVID-19 update. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Burke, seconded by Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld. Does staff want to touch on this, please?
Yeah, I think I can go through it. I'll get the rest of put up the report. Basically, we were hoping for some new clarity from the province on some of the things that have been discussed. It's getting sort of, I guess, what worse is what the intention is. Ontario had 1,388 cases today, depending on which newspaper you read, 1,388 or 1,368. In our area, we're not really being touched, but we have to do some precautions. Ontario's going to the code colors, which is, we were hoping that for this report, there would be some information from the province. Basically, it really hasn't been given to us. There's things that are changing each day, but from our little perspective in our township, with the coming of inclement weather, which this report's thrown out the window today because it's 22 degrees. But with good things are coming.
It's just not what we expected.
We're going to phase out our window for now, which means we're going to have to bring people back into the building. So there's some procedures that we're going to have to put in place, especially for the winter. But we're going to be doing that with council's approval. And if there's days where it's not too bad and someone wants to come to the window, we'll still open the window. But as the snow comes, because of snow falling off the roof, we're going to have to block that off completely. They're not going to be able to come there. For the mild weather that we're having now, we can certainly open it. When we do switch over, we're going to bring staff in through a different door because we're going to minimize the time that our staff are touching the door handles that other people touch. Our staff has a regime between people cleaning the door handles and things, but we're going to leave that up to one staff. We're continuing our safety protocols. I was hoping that we would have wasted a lot of money on these plexiglass things, but no, we're going to keep continuing these for a long time. In fact, to accommodate 10 people in this room, I'm going to construct another barrier, because the way I can do it right now, to put 9 people in the room, I have to have the mayor without one. So we're going to construct another one, but we're doing these protocols as they come up. The province is coming out with some new things. They've been sort of not sending a lot out today. And we'll be talking about in our grant world, the province is talking about some tax reliefs for businesses for property tax, which will be funding half of it. So that's something we'll be talking about in the future. But we're continuing with our COVID stuff. Our staff are continuing with having regular meetings and social coffee breaks together so that staff actually get to talk to each other, because we've sort of separated public works and the regular staff. So on Thursday, Michelle's gonna have a coffee break with the public works in here. And this is sort of our safe room because everybody can come in and be safe. So we're continuing our protocol. Our staff seem to be very comfortable, but things may get worse, and we're waiting for more information from the province. So this is all I have for this.
Councilor Robinson.
Are residents using the Dropbox?
They do use the Dropbox, but during the day, they are very much coming to the window because the window's there and they know they don't have to put their mask on, so they come right to the window. At night, we have the other Dropbox they can come into, and they are using it, but we're actually finding now that we're having more people come to the window to use the Dropbox. And that, Laura, you agree with that? People love to walk up to the window and rip their mask off.
I thought you were gonna say they like the cheerful, smiley faces.
They do like the cheerful, smiling faces too.
Yeah, they don't get much of that anywhere else.
Any other questions?
Any order
I'm sure that's a common joke.
Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Buckwell?
Yes.
Councilor Ranky Schoenfeld?
Yes,
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 8.8 is our grants update. I have a resolution that council accepts the grant update report. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Buckwell, seconded by Councilor Robinson. And I'll ask if we can see the report.
Sure. And just maybe I can speak on the report. So this is again our treasurer's second day on the job. The chart, what we want to do is just provide council with a little bit of information where we are with grants. I will say that the chart's going to look a little different. On the 17th, we'll probably bring it back. There are some opportunities coming up and some things to correct or add to. A couple of highlights in the grant report in the chart. One is that there's one grant that we did use, and it was a grant for Golden Lake Community Center, and we applied for, I think it was $50,000 or something, and they gave us $3,000. The contribution from us was going to be over $45,000, so we didn't move forward with that grant. We did receive the digital services grant, which we had last year, and we're working on implementing it now. I think we received $5,200. So we're on our way with that one right now. That's a continuation to the digital grant that we did last year. A couple of the grants that are, the red grant is completed, Main Street grant completed, and Canada Day grant completed. And I believe in the next week or so, we'll be submitting our Canada Day application. And there's some new COVID-related infrastructure granting coming up, and we're just reviewing some of that information now. With some of the press releases that you get, it doesn't tell you when the application deadlines are, so it's somewhat confusing. And not officially, but there's rumored to be some more COVID money coming from the province, but we'll wait till we see that in writing.
Can you go down a little more to the not approved one? So the summer student program, so did we have a summer student that now we have to pay for? Or
So this summer student, one that was not approved, this is a provincial program that was canceled. And normally, last year, we had a part of a student, so it wasn't something that we were completely budgeting to have.
so did we have a student though, in that program that we were counting on getting the grant and we didn't?
So that student would have been the one with the hub trailer.
Okay, so we didn't.
We didn't use the hub trailer this year, so we didn't have that student.
Okay, so it's not like we're out any money because we were counting on getting the money.
No.
Thank you.
And the question I had, if you go back up to the top, Andrew, was my figure wrong in my mayor's address? I had 589, and this was last year's figure, but I think this year dropped a little bit. Am I right, or, because the information I got may have been wrong?
This would be based on what the treasurer had received previously.
Okay.
So we'll confirm that number for the next report, but I imagine it's probably close.
Right, well, it is close, yeah.
So it's-
The figure I was using came from the Ottawa Valley Business News, so I don't know if their figure was accurate or
and
not.
ours would normally be based on what was given to us.
Right.
And just one important thing in the grant world is, well, that cemetery project, which we haven't done this year, that money or that project in the grant stream closes in 2026. So we will use that money before that, but it's not like we're close to the deadline. It's our consultant advised us that it was best to do the job next year, the physical part of the job. So we still have that money, and there's still lots of time in the grant calendar.
Have they finished the engineering for that
Yes, so
second phase?
we're ready to tender. So before the end of the year, if we desire, we can tender.
Thank you. Any other questions? Call for the vote. Councillor Burnt?
Yes?
Councillor Buckwell?
Yes.
Councillor Reckie-Schonfeld?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 8.9 is the Wilkins Trail update. I have a resolution. The council accepts the report on the Wilkins Trail, and then moving the seconder, moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Reckie-Schonfeld. And can you bring up the report?
Should we bring up the report, and I can deal without the report? So some good news in the Wilkins Trail. We have completed the surveying of the Gurlitz End, so it is staked and marked out. We have had some discussion with a local college. I don't like to put names in until I have that solidified, about doing an environmental assessment. And not that we need an environmental assessment because it hasn't been determined yet, but they're willing to do an environmental assessment. So this would be a comprehensive environmental assessment, which is just a good thing to have for the interpretive value for the project. Since my update, I've had updates on the updates, and I'm actually meeting with the college and 2 instructors on the Wilkins Trail next Monday. So they're very, very interested. They suggest that a lot of the environmental study would be done with foliage on the trees. So there's components they would do in the fall and the winter, but there's other components that they'll do once the foliage is on the trees. So that's a very good thing. I would say that there will not be a cost, that's a consulting cost, but there may be cost for materials and that has, if that's required. But our cost will be minimal compared to what it would be if you brought a professional company in. So now with this information, we're going to do a little bit more flagging just to make sure we can't lose the survey stake. We're also going to share that information with the hunting neighbors and the orphan club. It'll be valuable to them. And we'll meet with the ad hoc committee just to talk about some planning and give them this information that we're presenting tonight.
Councilor Ray Schoenfeld.
Do you know how much the surveying cost?
I don't have the invoice yet, but generally it's going to be, you know, in a survey of a couple of lines, we do the $2,500 range. Council have agreed to up to $10,000 to finish 2020.
And when we had met with the committee members, they had talked about moving the committee on to a different up one where they would looking for partners that would also help contribute to the financial costs of the Wilkins Trail.
And we're there.
You're there? Okay.
So that would be, you know, that planning meeting we're talking about, it going, that we've got this information, now we can actually go a little further with this partnership and things.
Thank you.
So we have two members of the committee that are actually going to look at some of the partnerships.
And if I could just add, one of the partnerships is the recent development with Algonquin College. And they were very, very pleased to take on a project like this because I guess with COVID, a lot of the locations where they normally would go to do some of their you know, on the ground training or do some of their work, they were not available because of COVID. There were different places that turned them down. So they were really, really pleased to be able to get a project like this, which really had some value as far as providing us a benefit as well. Yes, Councilor Evans.
I know the college has an adventure naturalist program, which really would dovetail well into something like this. And if they took it to the next level, they could do like an interpretive walk, right? Where, you know, they could talk about the trees and the flora and the fauna. Just saying, maybe that's something they could think of. They might have some money that they could contribute for doing that kind of thing.
Certainly worth exploring. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Bucklow?
Yes.
Councilor Ray Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Item 8.10 is the holiday turkey. I have a resolution that council, as a token of appreciation, provides each employee with a festive turkey not to exceed $25 per person, and that any unclaimed turkeys be donated to the local food bank. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Ray Schoenfeld, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Questions, comments? Councilor Ray Schoenfeld.
What is a festive turkey?
It's a politically correct way of saying Christmas turkey.
Just checking. I
It's a
didn't
happy
know if
turkey.
it was
I was gonna
decorated.
say it's
Turkey with a bowl.
Maybe it had a little heart on it. Maybe it's a different turkey, I don't know.
It's got
Fishy feet.
holly around its neck.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Any other comments? I'll call the vote. Councilor Burns.
Yes.
Councilor Bucklow.
Yes.
Councilor Ray Schoenfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 8.11 is the electronic radar signs report. I have a resolution that staff bring a report to council on options and pricing comparisons of portable and fixed speed monitoring signs, and that this item be included in the 2021 budget deliberations. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Schoenfeld. Questions, comments? Yes, Council Byrd.
Did the same report that it could be stationary or portable?
Yeah, it's, the report to council would be pricing on both options.
Okay,
And this is partly as a result of the emails and the AGM meeting for the active transportation and cycling group. They certainly would like to see a portable sign if they could on Lake Dory Road and on Traymore Road. But I'm sure there's other areas of the municipality where and just so council knows, the county has also had discussion with the OPP on increasing some of the enforcement for speeding, for seatbelts, and distracted driving. So they're hoping that the enforcement, the OPP will spend more time in those areas. The one thing with these signs, and speaking to Andrew, he said the one we currently have can do the data collection. It can collect data on vehicles and the speeds they're traveling and times of day and so on, so that it can help the police if there is a particular person or vehicle that is continually, and I see your counselor laughing, so I'm wondering if she's one of those.
Oh heavens, no.
2:30 in the morning past our place.
What's that?
2:30 in the morning past our place. 7 days a week.
Yeah.
There's one vehicle that goes through that either needs muffler work or has got an intentionally not a muffler.
there's a number of trucks in our area that's, should be almost taken off the road. When they come around the corner of the post office, and they go up Lake Dory Road, like, the poor residents that live there, but I know I live there, but I had a shotgun up the window next time I went by. Because when you go by the same time every day.
You know that it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know a guy that had a truck there probably about 3 years ago. He lived up in Munns Bay, and I could hear him on my farm when he left the drive out to Highway 60. There's no need for that.
No.
And that's something else we are focusing on, are the illegal exhaust systems that people are using. Councilor Ricky Schultz.
This is just kind of a little aside, and if the strategic plan is gonna govern our journey, right? I'm just thinking, I don't know on a report if it would be possible, but maybe not, like we'd include our different values, right? So to me, when we're looking, to me, when we're looking at that, to me, that's environmental stewardship and family history.
Yes, Andrew.
So, Michelle and I have had discussions, and what we're going to do, and what I've done in other municipalities, is we're going to redo our reports, and there's going to be a link to the strategic plan on every report. So you will be able to put number 50 or whatever numbers on there as which values of the strategic plan that the report is linked to. So
Because I was
that's sort of
just-
everything you do now.
Right. We might not go over 50, that could get confusing, but having those 5 values, I think, is some of those you could
That's
say,
basically what it'll do.
yeah.
Value 1, 2, 3, or 4 would be 9.
Because I think that would be kind of good, then the public can see how our strategic plan is linked to our different reports. And
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Burke.
There was a discussion at the county of those people speeding on the Lake Dory Road, but that falls under us because the road is in our township.
I did have that question, and we would have to purchase the sign because OPP policing is all municipal funded. It's not funded by the county. So
That's why it comes back.
that's why it comes back to the municipalities. We would have to get permission from the county, which they said would be no problem at all, but we would have to purchase the signage
And install.
and install it, yes.
Thank you.
So a call vote, Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Buckwall,
Yes.
Councilor Ricky Schultz,
Yes,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Item 9.1 is the Public Works update. I have a resolution that council accepts the Public Works update. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld, seconded by Councilor Burns. And does staff want to,
Well, Normally at this time of year, I'd be commenting on the first snowfall and why we shouldn't go out on gravel roads and tear up gravel, because there's no frost in the ground. Now, not only there's no frost, there's no snow. So,
Dandy weather.
but we are progressing, the CCAM is in place and we're working on getting lights in it and some other things into our second quarter plug-in. And our equipment is getting ready. There's one sander box that we relined and it's just getting painted tomorrow, I think.
Can you bring up the report, please? There's something wrong.
So I will comment that Harry Ashik is being assigned to prepare information for our asset management policy. And there's a lot of detail that goes in that is required regardless if we buy the software. Basically, the first component is a tangible assets policy. And what that will direct is it will direct when you do service to a road, when you replace a road, when you replace a piece of equipment, when you replace a fire truck. All those things have to be inventoried before we can even think about putting it into software. So that will be the first component coming to council, and I expect that to happen in December.
Yes, Councilor
It
Burns.
says next week, the season patrol employee will start. What does that mean?
So as we explained to council at the last meeting, we would be redirecting one of our employees that has worked just plow truck operation and sanding and plowing at Golden Lake. This employee will be doing some of the plowing, but also doing the road patrol that's required under the Municipal Act. It's a new thing for us, but just with some reassignments, this is the way we're going to operate this year.
Would that not fall under the public works coordinator?
Normally it has, but with a work reassignment, we have that person doing something else, and the acting coordinator, we felt it was better to have that person in a plow truck. So that's why it's a temporary thing, and we may go back to the way we were, but that's how we're starting out this year.
Okay, thank you.
And is the renovations at the Golden Lake Fire Hall complete, or are they still working on those?
There's still some things going on, and the fire chief will bring in a report to the 17th meeting.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, I'll call the vote. Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Buckwell,
Yes.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld,
Yes,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
and a yes, that's carried. Thank you. That brings us to correspondence. I have a resolution that council accepts correspondence items 10.1.1 to 10.1 and 12 as information. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Councilor Burns,
Yes.
Councilor Bucklow,
Yes.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld,
yes,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
and a yes, that's carried. Thank you. That brings us to action items. 10.2, I have a resolution. Council directs staff to prepare a letter regarding the Blue Box proposed regulations to be signed by the mayor. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld, seconded by Councilor Buckle. Questions or comments? My only question is this just a letter stating when we want to do the transition, or is this?
So if I may, so with your last agenda on not come in business, we were told that there's 45 days for comments. So I gave you some information. If council has any comments, I'd like to, get that stuff together. Because there's so many components to it, I would like, and the timing, I would like to be able to put that letter together. And if it's council's desire, we could bring the letter back to the next meeting, but, we're working on a timeline.
Is this a letter we would do in cooperation with the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center, or would they do their own?
They would do their own.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilor Burke?
Do we have any date for when that is supposed to start?
They gave councils an option as to which year they wanted to start their programs. And is that what will be included in our letter?
It'll be partly included in the letter, and this date of starting is a floating date. I think it was 2023.
Right, to 2026.
But the program, the whole thing started years ago. And it's taken a long time to get to this point. I imagine it will still float with the provincial elections, but they're getting closer. I think that the biggest component for a municipality is that the intent of the legislation was that the producer would pay for the recycling and not the municipality. Because right now, what works is it's a double pay for the taxpayer, because they pay a deposit on something that they buy, or they pay the cost of packaging, and then for the municipal taxes, they pay the cost of disposal. So what's supposed to happen, or what the intent is that the producer pays the whole shot. So that's what we're going to comment back on, to try to make sure that we stay within that, and that we don't get a program that the producer is giving a sweet deal to a municipality to do recycling and manage it, when it's actually the producer that should be paying for it.
And I know one of the hopes for the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center is that they will become a recycling center for some of the producers, so that they would pay, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, they would pay some of the operating costs for the center in order for them to collect and recycle their products.
And the intent would be that they would pay all the costs for the recycling as producers. Which
Yeah, but
will offset others.
the producers just want to put that cost onto whatever they sell, so the consumers won't be paying for it anyways.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So they're not going to take the whole.
But we already do pay,
Oh, no, I
as the
know.
consumer, we already.
It's not going to change the traditional, put the price up, and we're still going to be paying.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we call the vote. Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Buckles?
Yes.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld?
Yes,
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
I'm a yes, it's carried. Item 10.2.2, I have a resolution, whereas the Township of North Algonah Wilberforce received correspondence from Norfolk County in regards to illicit cannabis grow operations. Be further resolved that the Township of North Algonah Wilberforce supports their correspondence to Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, requesting better regulations and tracking of prescription cannabis, increased regulatory and enforcements by Health Canada, increased OPP resources and funding to municipalities to deal with complaints and bylaw issues related to the illicit grow operations. And be it further resolved that this resolution be sent to Premier Doug Ford, MP Cheryl Gallant, and MPP John Yakubowski. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Buckwald, seconded by Councilor Burns. Comments, questions? Yes.
Just notice something, that if council's okay with just changing, amending the resolution, just because your letter is going to the actual prime minister being copied to the premier, the word OPP should be changed to the police resources.
council agree that, with that friendly amendment wording change? And I've made that change. Call the vote, Council Burnt,
Yes.
Council Buckles,
Yes.
Council Ricky Schonfeld,
Yes.
Council Robinson,
Yes.
I'm a yes, it's carried, thank you. Item 10.2.3, I have a resolution on municipal voting, whereas the Township of North Algonah Wilberforce received correspondence from the City of Barrie in regards to ranked ballots for municipal elections. Be it further resolved that the Township of North Algonah Wilberforce supports their correspondence to Premier Doug Ford requesting the provincial government reverse their proposal to remove ranked ballots as a legitimate option for municipal elections. And be it further resolved that this resolution be sent to MPP John Yakubowski. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Buckles. Questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns? Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Sorry,
I'm sorry, Councillor Robinson had a question.
when they say ranked ballot, what exactly does it mean?
Ranked ballot means that when you're voting and if you were voting for the position of mayor or councillor, the ranked ballot indicates a regular ballot, just you get one option to vote. The ranked ballot, you get your first choice and maybe your second or third choice. And that way, I don't know, maybe somebody else can explain it better than I can, but
So ranked ballots, and I've never worked in these ballots at ranked ballots, but ranked ballots are similar to basically the first, second choice. So it's like, I guess the easiest way to describe it is like when they're doing leadership convention. There's actually ranked ballots, and you saw that in the last leadership. So it means they don't have to go to the second round because you're already ranked. It doesn't affect our municipality at all. So all we would be doing is supporting a larger municipality that have ranked ballots.
Okay. So I thought that.
and I'm not, the process, I know how it works for a convention, because if one candidate doesn't get enough votes to put them over the top, then you go to the
Yes.
next choice on the rankings.
Mhm.
I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Buckles,
Yes.
Councillor Ricky Schonfeld,
Yes.
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
yes, that's carried. Item 10.2.4 is the military service recognition book. I have a resolution that council approves advertising in the Royal Canadian Legion 2021 military service recognition book with a quarter page ad not to exceed $570 including taxes. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Buckles, seconded by Councillor Schonfeld. I believe this is what we normally subscribe to. when-
This is what you've done for the last 3 years.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Buckles,
Yes.
Councillor Ricky Schonfeld,
Yes.
Councillor Robinson,
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried, thank you. That brings us to bylaws. I have a resolution. Now therefore, the Council of North Algonah Wilberforce Township enact the following bylaws. Bylaw 2020-87 being a bylaw to appoint a municipal clerk. Bylaw 2020-88 being a bylaw to appoint a municipal treasurer. Bylaw 2020-89 being a bylaw to prohibit and control pay waste. Bylaw 2020-90 being a bylaw to regulate off-road vehicles. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by,
Oh, just sorry, before you do that, there's actually a mistake, there's paper waste, so that'll be corrected. It shouldn't be page, it should be paper.
Paper.
It says it on here, but
sorry, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Buckles. Comments, questions? Councillor Buckles?
Just looking at one in the ATV bylaw. It talks about maximum speed being 20 kilometers on a 50-kilometer highway. I believe the current provincial regulation is 30 in a 50. Is it not?
And I'll have to say that I've used Mackie to get that information, but we could change it to 30.
It's not putting a restriction on the other province that already has. I just think 30 would be more appropriate.
We could either reach it to just a 3, change that.
So do we need a resolution to change this resolution, to change this bylaw from 20 to 30?
Because of the timing, if we pull that one bylaw, we'll just bring it back to the next meeting, it's only a week away. How's that, it's easier to do?
That's easier to do, yes. Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
I'm just curious, why are we having, two separate ones for the clerk?
So a municipality appoints a clerk and a municipality appoints a treasurer. In the municipal act, they're not the same position, they're two different positions.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns,
Yes,
Councillor Buckles,
Yes.
Councillor Reggie Schoenfeld,
Yes,
Councillor Robinson.
Yes.
Yes, that's carried. Thank you. Are there any matters of urgency? Any notice of motions? Reports from committees, we've gone through upcoming meetings and unfinished business. Our next regular meeting of council will be November 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. And item 15.2 is,
yes.
yes,
on upcoming meetings, there's another meeting on November 30th. Public meeting at the Golden Community Center.
And that's a planning meeting.
Yeah. This is some of the councils and stuff. You sat out in there. Make sure it goes up on the board, it's on the website.
What is that for, Amanda?
It's November 30th. Public meeting at Golden Community Center. It's planning.
It's a planning act, it'll be a very brief meeting.
It's a public meeting, that's
It is a public meeting, yes, and
That we have to be there.
yes, you have to have, at least 3 councillors there.
And what time is it?
It's,
and that will be included on our next agenda.
yes, and, the clerk will send information out tomorrow on that, or sorry, Thursday on that, actually Friday. Mr. McLaren had set that meeting up, so the clerk will meet on Friday.
Okay. Thank you. Item 15.2 is the Roma Virtual Conference for 2021.
We basically put that in, that it's something that council should be aware of, and it's not, there's no resolution with it.
I was just checking, I didn't see one. And the date of that, I believe is, do we have the date, January, it's usually the 3rd week of January. Pardon?
I believe it's the 25th.
25th. I've registered already through the county, so if councilors want to attend, they would just have to notify Michelle in the office.
We're going to be bringing out some of what we had last year with that calendar with all the different conferences, but they're coming out slowly right now, the conferences.
Right. So item 15.3 is the municipal partnerships inquiry. Maybe staff can speak to that.
It's for the next meeting, and just some information that we have a student in an engineering program that's asking about partnership with infrastructure. So I've been providing some information, but it's there as a placeholder because there may be some questions to council on that from the student.
Okay. Thank you. And item 15.4 is the tourism awards nomination.
And we actually added that one today because we received the information today, and the cutoff is November 16th. So it's actually before your next meeting. So council could agree to talk about this now. I don't have a report, I don't have a nomination, but if it's something council's interested in, you have to have a special meeting to do something today.
Council have any, yes, Councilor Robinson.
Who's going to be involved in those awards?
Is there 3 different categories? I'm trying to remember
Just
the,
pull it up.
okay. Yeah, so there's 3 categories, the tourism champion, the business of distinction, and the special event of the year. Yes, Councilor Robinson.
I was thinking of Watcher Caves. I know they had a very tough time this year, but I think he's been a forerunner in trying to get tourism into the community.
So tourism champion or business of distinction?
I would say champion.
What about Shaw Woods, would that fit in any place? Because that's brought a lot of people into the township of Colvin.
That would be like a tourism champion. So.
Yeah. Or you can switch them around.
Yeah.
Like
How did you just thought?
you know, a special event of the year to me is the Montreal Cup. I mean, they do bring a lot of people into the area. But it does take a big undertaking to get all the volunteers and, you know.
Supports.
So, I mean,
And they were one of the few that were able to do their event before COVID.
yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, it would be nice to, like, I mean, you can nominate them, doesn't mean you're gonna win, right?
Right.
Put their name forward is, I think,
Right,
it's noteworthy.
that's right.
So that means we have 3 nominations. Is that the route council wants to take?
Yeah.
So we've got Shaw Woods as
Champion.
tourism champion, the Caves as business of distinction, and special event of the year would be the Blanchard Cup.
Yeah.
We need a resolution now to
You should have a resolution
yes,
for that. The deadline date is Monday. So staff would have until Monday to complete something. I guess you can do the resolution tonight.
The OVTA site has the nomination form on it.
So that it could be,
I know it's a quick timeline and stuff like that, but I mean, to me, like, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And it does bring, it does bring recognition to our township.
are you able to do Laura's working on a,
okay. Your way.
What would you like to say? Staff?
that staff be directed to, council nominates, well, the Shaw Woods for the Marilyn Alexander Tourism Champion, Blanchard Caves for Business of Distinction, and the Blanchard Cup for Event of the Year. Councilor Buckwell, do you have the site open now?
I do.
Is there a requirement for the mayor to sign off on that? If you could put that in the resolution also. Or could I imagine maybe I could just sign off on it.
just see if the form will download for me on our internet.
Yeah, it's very-
If only we had a high-speed internet.
Or it doesn't need to be signed, but it doesn't, say it has to be the head of council. Again, these nominations can go in from anyone, to my understanding. So the CAO could, I would think, could do it.
Okay.
Did you have something to read back yet, Laura?
Almost. You open it out, it's gonna be- it should be on this one.
So I have a resolution that council nominates Shaw Woods for the Marilyn Alexander Tourism Champion, the Bossier Caves for Business of Distinction, and the Bossier Cup for the special event of the year.
Could maybe we just put 2020 ownership cup and we want this for that specific year? Is that important?
I think we'll be okay with what we have.
Okay.
Can I get a mover and a second? Moved by Councillor Randy Schoenfeld, seconded by Councillor Robertson. Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Buckland,
Yes.
Councillor Randy Schoenfeld,
Yes.
Councillor Robinson.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's carried. I didn't have the form, did you capture that? Okay,
Should trigger it.
thank you. I have a resolution, item number 16, that council goes into close at 9:01 PM pursuant to section 2.3.92B of the Municipal Act for two personal matters about identifiable individuals, including